A lot of narcissistic abuse survivors often refuse to leave their homes. Why? Because home represents the only predictable environment they have left. After years of psychological manipulation and emotional chaos, your nervous system gets hijacked by constant unpredictability. At home, you know what to expect. At home, you can let your guard down. At home, you don't have to be hyper vigilant who may target you next or what emotional landmine you may step on. The outside world feels dangerous because you no longer can trust people or your own judgment about people. Your ability to read social situations has been systematically destroyed by the narcissist, by the person who weaponized your trust against you. You do not know who you will encounter, how those people will treat you, or whether you will have the emotional resources to handle unexpected interactions. So, what do? You stay inside, where the variables are limited and the threats are manageable. This is not your laziness or antisocial behavior, it's your trauma response. When your nervous system has been conditioned to expect psychological attacks, isolation becomes a form of self protection. Home becomes your sanctuary because it's the only place where you feel you have some control over your environment. Hi, I'm Danish, a narcissistic abuse recovery professional. Today, we are going to explore in depth why survivors of narcissistic abuse do not want to leave home. Many people do not realize that what survivors experience is actually agoraphobia. Agoraphobia is commonly misunderstood as just the fear of open spaces, but it is really the fear of being in situations where escape may be difficult or help unavailable. For you as a trauma survivor, this fear becomes amplified because your nervous system has been conditioned, as I said, to expect danger everywhere. Starting with the amygdala, which processes fear and threat detection, goes into overdrive. It sends signals to the hypothalamus, which then triggers the release of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. You may already know that. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational thinking, gets hijacked by these fear responses. This creates a perfect storm where logical thinking becomes nearly impossible and you feel paralyzed. Now, why am I explaining this to you? You will understand it in a minute, but here is a hint. I want you to fully know that you're not making this up. It's not in your head or that you're broken. You are actually struggling with something that's beyond your control. A lot of survivors, unfortunately, get told that it's their social anxiety. In truth, it is one of the major trauma responses that you get shamed for, which is unfortunate. The minute you think about going to an event or a social gathering, what happens? You feel stuck, frozen. You feel you can't move, you can't function, can't do anything at all. You start believing you have some sort of disorder, that you are broken beyond repair or that you're just naturally shy or introverted. But that's not the case in this context. It's the nervous system perceiving leaving as a massive threat. This is exactly what happened in my case. This is my story. As a child, I spent most of my time within the confinement of my home. And for this reason, people would call me all sorts of names, my own family. I would not go out and play with other kids. No, I would not go out and explore the world. Everyone thought I was shy. They thought I was lazy. It was deliberate. They thought I was a coward, but I was not. Nobody knew that both worlds, inside and outside my home, were different parts of hell for me. The only difference was that the inside of my home was a familiar hell that I knew how to navigate. I could find corners to hide in, but outside it was extremely unpredictable. You may ask, what made it so unpredictable? The answer is extreme bullying. I had not only been subjected to narcissistic abuse at home, but I also experienced the worst form of bullying one ever could outside. When I forced to take my mother back after a separation of 7, 8 years, I was suddenly dropped in a community that didn't accept me. I wanted to belong, but they didn't, they just rejected me and kept doing so. Why? Because I was the one with different mannerisms and customs. The children in the local community saw me as the weird one, the crazy one. I could not fit in anywhere. I was heavily bullied, and I remember to this day how these kids and even a lot of those adults would chase me on the roads, literally. I could not walk anywhere peacefully. I remember my mother asking me to go out and buy groceries or run simple errands. She would think I was just being shy, resistant, or lazy when I refused. She thought I was being disobedient. This would then invite even more shaming from her husband, guilt tripping, and a lot of physical abuse as well. Then I would have to force myself to go out anyway. This cycle made me extremely socially anxious. I would stutter when trying to talk to people. I could not make eye contact with anyone. I would shiver and sweat uncontrollably in social situations. That is what I was struggling with every single day. I just wanted to stay in my home forever. No events, no school, no social situations, nothing. But that was not my natural shyness. If you are struggling with the same thing, maybe it's not your shyness either. It's not even just social anxiety and definitely not introversion. It's your trauma response. We survivors do not trust unfamiliar situations because we do not know how to navigate the predictable unpredictability. We do not know what kind of attack may be launched at us next. So, what do? We choose what feels like safety, even when that safety is actually isolation. The nervous system of a person who has experienced complex trauma operates fundamentally differently than that of someone who has not experienced prolonged abuse. When faced with the prospect of leaving home, your body goes into what is called hypervigilance mode. Your heart rate increases, your breathing becomes shallow, or you stop breathing, and your muscles tense up in preparation for fight, flight, or freeze. But since there is no actual immediate physical threat, this energy has nowhere to go, creating this paralyzed feeling. The brain then starts catastrophizing, imagining all the worst case scenarios that could happen outside. Will someone reject me? Will they take advantage of me? Will I say something wrong? Will I be judged? Will I be attacked? Will I be laughed at? These thoughts quickly spiral because the brain has been trained to expect the worst form of human interactions, the worst side to humanity. Things changed dramatically for me once I understood what was really happening. From doing webinars to meeting so many people online every single day, I've gotten completely used to social interactions, but I was not like this. It gives me no anxiety anymore now. In fact, I love doing this every day. I love appearing before you, before a lot of people, talking with them. This transformation happened because I realized it was never my natural personality, which is why I've been telling you maybe it's not your shyness. Maybe it's just a big trauma response. Maybe it's your nervous system dysregulation. When you understand that your fear of leaving home is not a character flaw, but a survival mechanism, everything changes. Compassion comes in, and that's what you need to be different, to reclaim yourself, to build that confidence. Now, you may wonder, how did I heal this, or what can you do to heal this if you're struggling with the same problem? Well, the key lies in controlled exposure to social situations while respecting your capacity. It's called expanding your window of tolerance. In my case, I started talking to people gradually. For example, I would talk to one new person every day when I started doing this work. Then maybe once a week, I would challenge myself a little bit more. This is how I increased my capacity for socializing. The most important thing I did was I regulated my nervous system. If you are familiar with my work, you may already know about the wet noodle technique. Basically, it is all about becoming a wet noodle in moments when you are exposed to extreme stress, when you get triggered. You just have to relax your body and imagine you have no bones whatsoever. Just drop those muscles, drop those shoulders, relax the jaw, and breathe. If you remember to breathe, you will reclaim your power, and all of a sudden, you will start thinking again. It felt magic when I did for the first time in my own healing work, in my own therapy. You just have to calibrate your approach. You have to know where you are and where you would want to be and how to bridge that gap using nervous system regulation techniques. Ask yourself questions like, where do I begin? What do I begin with? Who do I begin with? How much can I handle right now? Then start small and build gradually. Maybe it is making eye contact with one person at the grocery store. Maybe it is saying hello to a neighbor. Maybe it is joining one online community where you can feel safe. To give you an experience of this kind of gradual exposure, you can become a part of my Thrive After Narcissistic Abuse membership program, where we have a thriving community of survivors like you who can connect with each other. There are monthly Q&As, a lot of sessions where you can talk to each other, meetups, and that is how you can overcome this anxiety in a safe way. That is just one way of doing it. Right now, it's not open for enrollment, but you can get on a waiting list and you will be notified first when it opens. But remember, your reluctance to leave home is not your weakness. It's your mind's attempt to protect you based on past experiences, but you do not have to stay trapped in that protective response forever. With understanding, patience, compassion, and gradual exposure that respects your limits, you can reclaim your freedom to move through the world without constant fear. You are not broken. These are my words. Take them, embody them. You're not lazy. You're not naturally antisocial. You're a survivor who developed a completely biologically correct, rational response to irrational treatment. And that response can be healed one step at a time. With that, let's bring this episode to an end. And as always, let the healing begin and continue.